Welcome, doctor. Welcome back.
Thank you. I love being here. I love the deep conversations we're having. I can't wait to get started.
All right. Well, as you know, we've been talking about multidimensional beings and multidimensions and trying to introduce that, which is sad that we shouldn't have to introduce that to our society because certain aspects of society understands multidimensional aspects of things, and then other parts of society, majority of society, has no idea what that means. It almost seems demonic in many ways, right? So it's sad that we haven't had a school system doing this, but if you had to define what a multidimensional being is, how would you even start? Where would you even start?
I'll just give my little personal example of that. I'm a spiritual person. I've been a spiritual person my whole life. As a kid, because that wasn't promoted or understood, I was not understood even by my own father. So when I say multidimension, what's a dimension? What does that mean? This dimension is 3D. I'm in a physical space. You could almost say our emotional understanding and access would be another dimension of who we are. Okay, so I'm a physical being, I'm a mental being, and I'm an emotional being. All three are living in this unit of energy. But you can say, I have emotions. Oh, yeah, my emotions and my physical, they seem different and separate. I could see where there's an emotional part of me. I could see where there's a mental part of me. I could see where there's a physical part of me. Those are dimensions within one person. Me, for instance, when I was a child, I was on this physical plane. I was on an energetic awareness plane. I was on an empathic plane. So I have the ability to feel other people's feelings. So if my mom came in and she was frustrated and upset, and she didn't say anything, I could still feel she was frustrated and upset. So that's called an empathic, an energetic connection. So that's even another dimension. You see, I haven't gone anywhere. I'm still in my body. I'm still in the room, but there's another dimension. And then I have the capacity where my awareness, my energy goes to another place even higher than this, which is like a state of prayer or a state of meditation, which is beyond the mental capacity. So I could go visit and have a heavenly experience and peace and harmony and then drop back down, but I won't have words to go with it because my brain can't even comprehend what happens there.
You talking about dreaming, doctor?
No, I'm not talking about dreaming. I'm talking about prayer meditation, the space of prayer meditation.
Like in theta brain activity.
That's right. So talk about the brain activities because those are actually different dimensions as well.
Okay, well, see, that's a lot of people know the alpha, theta, delta, and all that. So you're saying those are actual different dimensional experiences because I do understand how a child, a 7-year-old or a 5-year-old, stays in theta majority of that time period. And so if anything happens in a beta state or an alpha or even a delta state, it's not part of their reality, right?
Right.
So when they're shifting to another brain level activity, you're saying that's a dimensional shift.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so that makes it more because we have this languaging like multidimensional. Oh, what are these crackpots? What are they even saying, right?
Yeah.
But if we say no, it's similar to brainwave states, then they're like, oh, that makes sense. So we want to bring all of this high information down to a practical level because, in the end of the day, who cares? Who cares? Because you can actually move up and down these brainwave states. You can move into another level of dimension. They say dementia, right? Oh, that person has dementia. That's a state of beingness.
Right.
Where they're not connected.
Right.
Right? So now we're talking about states of beingness. Somebody can get high on drugs and they're having a different dimensional experience. Some people take psychedelics and they see sacred geometry.
Right.
Like, how did they get there? Okay, it's drug induced, but does that place and time exist when people all over the world are having that same kind of experience? It must be a state. So we want to put everything in time and space because that's the reality that we've been taught. right? When you say it's a shame that we even have to have this conversation. I had just conversation yesterday where people are going to be like, oh, in 30 years from now, they're going to be like, can you even believe that people sat in class and tried to learn that they're God, or they're, that they didn't know that they were God, right? Because I think in the future, we're going to be so in tuned and aligned with that which created us, that we're going to see that this is just an expression. Like, this is the outfit that I'm wearing in this lifetime. And it's going to be that simple, because right now we're moving from this is my reality into everything else doesn't exist. And we're flipping it, saying, no, everything else exists. And this is your physical expression of it in this lifetime.
And that we are of God, meaning that we didn't realize we are of God because we were just taught different things and very fear-based things. So, but with this different dimensional state of being, as you're saying, whether it's drug-induced or another state of mind, is it in line with the dimensional understanding of, like, when somebody has a near-death experience and they go to, let's say, heaven, and it's not in the clouds anywhere, it's not in our physical time and space here, it's in another dimension. So is that a higher degree of this dimension?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you're getting, yes, exactly.
Or hell.
So now,
could hell be a lower sense of dimension?
Absolutely. Right. So it's a state. So we can say, instead of dimension, if that word is too out there for people, they can say it's a state of experience, if you will. It's a state of mind, but then what's mind? Okay. So it's a state of experience, a state of beingness would be the accurate way to be. You can say emotions. So I'm in the dimension of anger, right? Because when you're in anger, you're saturated in anger. That is a reality right there. You can say it has these kinds of things that go with it. The temperature rises, the voice volume rises. Like, there's a certain identification of anger. There's a certain identification of peace. Okay, why can't we say there's a dimension of anger, a dimension of peace, a dimension of love, a dimension of prayer, a dimension of meditation? So now we're just kind of moving up and down these experiences, but you can say they're different dimensions. People will lose their mind. They're off in some other place.
Right. Right.
But there's no physical place. So let's talk about 3D, 4D, 5D, because that's a very, what the heck is that stuff?
We hear that all the time. Yes, let's go there.
Right. We don't understand it. So the elementary version is 3D is time and space. And, it sounds so esoteric, but no, it's actually very simple. 3D is measurable by this way and that way, east and west, up and down, north and south, and back and forward, depth. That, the intersections of those will put you into a time and a space.
Right.
So 5 years old on the front porch. Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
So that's a reference point. It's a key. It's an anchor. It's a position on the quantum field. You can look at it. You can take a picture of it. It's very solid.
Right.
4D is just time. So 3D, between those three measurements, time is an intersection. It's the diagonal if you're looking at a math equation.
Okay.
Because time and space puts you at that point, 5 years old, front porch, right? So that's 5 years old is time, front porch is location. Location, the address and the GPS system, and there it is. So when we're a baby, we're aware of space first, and then we're taught time. Okay, it's morning, it's night, time to go to bed, time to be quiet,
That's still 3D, not 4D, you're saying?
Yes, but in the 3D, in a baby's understanding, 3D, if you can, this is how I think of it. When a baby first comes into awareness of what the heck's going on around here, they're aware of their space first. And as they age and experience, then they're taught time. Okay. I think time is completely created. It's man-made. And I think it's probably a lot of it's wrong. And then the fourth dimension is only time. I think of it as a line, because often when time is depicted, they show a timeline.
Okay.
So what do you do with time? You look at it, what do you do with time? But so time is one of those things the fourth dimension, people don't even talk about the fourth dimension. Like, I didn't even know what the fourth dimension was because everybody's talking about the fifth dimension in my education.
Right.
So then they talk about time, and I'm like, oh, no wonder they skipped about time. It's just this line.
So there's no space. It's just time. So
That's right.
You're floating in the. You're floating. Let me ask you a question. Would a ghost, let's say a paranormal experience, somebody who's an unbounded spirit who perhaps just has a traumatic death and they're floating around and they're haunting at a house, would that be a fourth dimensional experience?
Yes, because they're lost in time. A lot of ghosts, the death happens suddenly.
It seems like yesterday to them, right?
They're locked in time, because very often you'll hear the ghost story like, oh, it's 11 o'clock, listen for the footsteps, right?
Yeah.
Because that ghost quickly got killed. That person got killed quickly. Their brain kind of couldn't track that they got killed. You know, the funeral was there. They're looking at 11 o'clock when they got killed. They walked the stairs, and they're in this time loop.
Right.
Time loop. So sometimes we'll get in a lock, right? And we'll just like that thing, the time that person hurt my feelings. And then you review it and you review it and you review it, and you can't get out of that obsessive thought. You're stuck in the fourth dimension in that lock of time.
Wow. Interesting.
Okay. So time to me is like a line, but in my meditation, this came to me. What if the time opened up and you could slide through time? So to me, like, Kermit the Frog, it's just a line in his face, right? So it's just a line, and then he opens his mouth and information comes out, love comes out, kindness comes out, wisdom comes out, and then he closes his mouth and it goes away. So if you have this timeline of fourth dimension and you just kind of let go in your meditations, you can slip through that slot, it'll close behind you, and now time is not a lock. Now you're going beyond time. In my subconscious work that I do with my clients, I work in the fifth dimension. And the three dimension is space, time. Fourth dimension is time. Fifth dimension is time, space.
Okay. So you lost me there. So third dimension is space and time, and fifth dimension is time and space, meaning what? What's it's the same word.
Good.
But the order's different.
Right. So you see how there's kind of a natural progression.
Yes.
Space, time, space.
Okay. All right.
So what is time, space, and how does that work? Now I can, in the fifth dimension, in the work I do, I can go down, up and down time and land space. Then you have time, and then the fifth dimension in my work, we can travel the timeline. So my client can say, oh, this memory came back when I was 5 years old. And I can say, okay. And we can fly around in the fifth dimension through time and land in a space, front porch. Okay. Now we can actually go back there energetically through the memory, but also through the feelings, and land as an adult on the porch with the 5-year-old back into space and time.
Okay, I have to stop you there for a second. So I want to clarify, make sure I understand what you're saying. So in the fifth dimension, time seems to be the conduit of control in the fifth dimension, not space. Where in the three-dimensional world, I cannot, like I'm here in the studio, I cannot just like put myself over at my home, which is hundreds of miles away, or whatever it may be. I can put myself there because I have to go from space to space to space. But in the fifth dimension, time is the conduit, and in the third dimension, space is the conduit for interactions for multiple beings, multiple dimensional beings such as ourselves.
Exactly.
And so time, you can manipulate your spaces. Space is irrelevant, or it's there, but it's not. It's not linear, I guess is the word.
Right. So rephrasing what you just said is space on the three dimension, space rules, right? Space trumps rock, paper, scissors, space is the winner.
Yes.
And on the fifth dimension, time has more power over space.
Okay, for example, unbound spirits perhaps are caught in the fourth dimension, but what would be an example of what we see, whether we hear stories, what happens in the fifth dimension? Would this be what? What would be an example of what we would see or hear about people's experiences in the fifth dimension?
Astral travel.
Astral travel, okay. Near-death experiences?
Totally.
Oh, out-of-body experiences.
Yes.
That's why you could travel anywhere. Remote viewing, like we talked about the CIA remote viewing, that would be a fifth dimension experience.
That's right.
Okay.
Because location is not the reference. It's not the primary.
Right.
We let go of location. It's like we don't have gravity anymore. Gravity's not in control of us in the fifth dimension.
Okay.
So we can run around through time to get us in other places and other dimensions.
Okay, so this is so powerful what you're saying, Doctor, but I have to clarify here too, is that, so if I'm able to dimensionally shift just within the mental, physical, and emotional part of just being a human in the three-dimensional world, or near-death experiences, or ghost in the fourth dimension, or out-of-body experience, astral travel in the fifth dimension, I would have to be a multi-dimensional being. Otherwise, I couldn't have those experiences, right?
Absolutely.
So what makes me a multi-dimensional being then? Just the fact that I could have those dimensional experiences? Or is there some key or some, common thread that allows me to be a multi-dimensional being? Is that our soul or spirit? What is the common thread?
In the Bible, Jesus said, "These works and greater you can do." He woke people up from the dead, okay? And he said we can do things greater than that. Why? Because he had access to these dimensions. He understood the energy, he understood wave particle, he understood frequency, and he understood the highest vibration of all, love. So all we have to do is have an understanding. So what we're talking about here is going to give somebody an understanding. Now it's a possibility.
So can you be in the fifth dimension and be evil? Like I do want to talk about, because we've discussed on our shows in the past about these negative energies, these negative entities that are, whether they're reptilian-like or whatever that people are defining them as, but that are that affect us in the three-dimensional world, but we can't see them, smell them, or at least most people cannot. We can't use our five senses to figure that out. It's a thought, it's an addiction, it's whatever. So what dimension, if this is true, that these negative entities that are feeding off on us, whatever people say, what dimension are they in while we're in the third dimension?
Great question. They can be in all the same ones we are.
Huh.
We know they're on the 3D. A robber, right? A murderer. He's on my same dimension.
Right.
I have nothing to do with him. I don't like him. I don't think like him. I don't feel like him. I don't have the things that drive him. But he's still on my frequency here. Same with 4. Level 4. He can go in time, and he can also manipulate in the 50, 6, 70. Okay,
so throughout you're saying we'll get into 6 and 7, but throughout these different dimensions, it doesn't matter if you're negative or positive or good or evil. They're multi-dimensional beings too if they could travel in these different things as well.
Yeah.
But it seems like they're hiding in another dimension while we're in the third dimension because they're able to manipulate us better, easier.
Well, they're probably in 7 dimension, which is more of a creative place. So, when you say, oh, you manifest the $1 million or the Ferrari or whatever, you don't manifest them on the 3D.
All right.
You manifest them on the 5D in the space of possibilities, but you really create them on the 7D, which is where we play with the Legos. What's that video called? Minecraft?
Yeah, Minecraft, yeah.
Okay, 7D is like Minecraft, where you create things. That's where we can set our intentions, and then bang, it manifests so quickly.
Okay, all right. So let's go back. I didn't mean to take you off of the dimension.
That's okay. But I'm answering your question, saying where do these dark entities live? They live on all of them. How can they control us? They can control us from any dimension, especially the 7th dimension, except the higher you go, the cleaner you have to be. Because darkness has a low vibration and it's harder for them to go to 7D. So they can even go like, I don't know what happened to 1D and 2D. People don't talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so their frequency is low, manipulative, power over. Love is not power over. Love is abundance, flowing over, right? It wants to give. It's generous, the nature of love. The qualities that we're talking about, good, kindness, good and loving, the things that you talk about, the things that you promote, the things that you're teaching from your platform is love, kindness, consideration, generosity, these kinds of qualities, values that we're putting out into the world, because this darkness is trying to take over. But I think there's so much light going on in today's world that it's shining and the darkness is being exposed. And that's why we're like, oh, yuck, where did that come from? It's always been there, but it's been hidden, it's been covert. So I think we're in a cycle of the age of Aquarius, of the divine feminine rising, of being more in touch with our emotions. And I think that's what's causing this darkness to surface. And we're all like, oh, God forbid, like, what the hell is that?
FEMA camps.
And, right. Yeah. No, horrible things, right? Yeah. The child sex trafficking, yes. Like horrible things are coming to light now. And I think it's because we're rising. We're going through a cycle of rising consciousness. So we're looking at that darkness in the news and so on, but we also have to look at the darkness within us.
Right.
So as we clear this darkness within us, we're also clearing it generationally. Mother's side is family, father's side is family, past lives. And as we clear within ourselves, we're going up, we're easier to go up and down these dimensions and these different emotional dimensions and brain frequencies.
Okay.
So
brilliant. This is just brilliant information. Now, the sixth dimension, the seventh dimension, I don't want to break, we don't have enough time to go through every dimension, but how many dimensions are there, and how do you know that these dimensions exist?
Right. We only know them because this human thing is based on experiences. Like we think it's all thought. No, it's not thought. It's really our experience. Because if you have an experience, that's real for you. That's more real for you than some theory. People have said it just goes on and on and on. Because 3D is our primary reference right now, we're only going to be able to elevate to the ability that we can break down and have different experiences in these different dimensions. Look, we can't even get 3D right? So it doesn't, we're not going to run away in 5D and it's going to have all the answers. It's just having a reference that we're not locked into 3D, and then we can move to 5D and create something better. I think personally that the light has already won, and that's why the darkness is emerging, so it can be cleared out. And then we can have more peace on Earth.
All right. Well, I think that may be true. It may be true. It may not be true. I mean, I understand your belief on that. But before I don't want to get to the end of the story here first. Okay. I want to go back to two things. One, I want to talk about religions. All religions. Most religions, organized religions, do not teach these different dimensional states of being, or that we are multidimensional beings. At least not overtly.
They would not say that language, that's for sure.
So it seems like religions in general, and I don't care if whatever religion, unless it's some type of new age religion, but religions in general are keeping us ignorant of the fact, if this is to be true, ignorant of the fact that we are multidimensional beings and we actually are able to travel in different multi-dimensions based on our the continuum of fear versus love, right?
Yes.
So that seems to be a obstacle for many.
It is, but we have to, when we look at religion and try to compare it and understand it, we have to look at the essence, the value of the religion. I think people had awarenesses, but they were all over the place and there was no structure. So then a great teacher came along and said, look, here's some ideas, here's some structure, here's some direction. And then you give it to the commoners, and then they do crazy things with it and they're not following the rules. So then the smarter guys come and they say, well, let's organize this so everybody can stay on track. And oh I'll be in charge. So then they feel like in the Christian church, the model is the priest holds all the value and the commoners come to the priest, and the priest will be the conduit of the divine energy coming through. And that's like a parenting model, right? I will parent you. You guys don't know what you're doing. But then the problem is the darkness and the corruption comes in, and the parent takes power over the people. So they're not teaching the people. They're not shepherding the people. They're, controlling the people.
Well, the same thing with the Babylonians and the Satanists. They get access to this information, I guess, this multidimensional understanding, and then they just use it for evil. They use it for manipulating, hurting, and thy will. They do it for their own selfish interests rather than what? Using it for what?
Say the guy who started the religions, right? Jesus didn't start Christianity. He just gave the teachings, and the guys after him said, okay, everyone's losing it. Like, let's organize.
Yeah, well, he said, I did not come here to create a religion, but I came here to fulfill prophecy. And of course, what do? We created a religion around Christianity, of course.
Same with Buddhism.
Yeah.
Buddha's like, please don't do that. A lot of the other religions were like, no. But what happens is that person has power, one of the qualities of the divine energy, love, intelligence, and power. If you give something too much power, darkness itself will creep in there and take over. So it's not like that guy came in with bad intentions. Power was the conduit for darkness to come in and manipulate the system. So I was very angry at the church when I started waking up to the ways and systems. But through my spiritual understanding, I was like, oh, it's not man-made. Power corrupts, and they didn't have enough checks and balances in there. So the negative energy took over him, whether it's his own or, some kind of influence came in and started corrupting the system, because power is very dangerous. You don't give a child a bunch of power because they have an immaturity. They can't handle it all.
All right. So that makes complete sense to me, what you're saying. And now for the average person, whether they're been caught up into the religious dogma and the loophole of that, or if they're just new to hearing this information, that they are actually a multidimensional being that could shift in different dimensions based on, I assume, their intentions and their thoughts, right? And their emotional mindset. So what's your advice? How can people now, from this point on, start living a multidimensional life?
Mm-hmm. It's subtle. Okay. So this 3D is very noisy, very concrete, very dense. The different ways that we can move about these things is through subtle energy. It's subtle. So beauty, for instance.
This energy you're talking about is like what people refer to as God energy.
Yes, okay. God or awareness, right? So if I'm sitting here and no one's here and I'm just being quiet, instead of distracting myself with physical things or, the internet or whatever, and I just say, okay, I'm just going to focus on my breath. Like, oh, I don't know what that is. So I just focus on my breath. Now, my awareness is concentrated into the subtle. I'm breathing all day long, but until I get rid of all these distractions, am I going to focus here? So within the breath, I can slip into beta, theta, alpha, delta, just by focusing on the breath and quieting the mind and just stilling out all the nerves and the emotions. So my five sensory things, if I can shut those all down and move into the subtle, now I can start moving along the lines of dimensional awareness, brain waves, emotional states. Create more space, because then peace comes in, move all the particles out of that understanding or experience. So there's more wave, there's more space. So I'm making things less dense. 3D is dense. So I want things less dense. I want to declutter my house. I want to eat less food. I want to, less stimulation. And then I can start moving into frequency. People paying more attention to their dreams, writing down their dreams. That's access to another consciousness.
Another dimension or consciousness.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's awareness. So if I'm going on a walk in the woods and all of a sudden I think I see a ghost, And my mind wants to dismiss it because ghosts aren't real. I never was taught with ghosts. Instead of dismissing it, I'll say, wait a minute, wonder what that was. And I become curious, then more things can come in. But we also want to be protective because since darkness runs on the same frequencies that light does, I want to say for my highest and good. So if I'm moving into like, oh, I'm going to play with this Ouija board, highest and good. Or I'm going to read this book about demology just to understand it. Oh, well, I want to look at it from a highest and good perception. I would not recommend it because it's coded and it will come. So I stay away from all dark. I don't watch horror movies. I don't listen to rap music. All dark things, I don't want any business because there is a lot of manipulation within that stuff. And I don't succumb to it.
So what you're saying, doctor, and I think it's brilliant, is start out with breathing to connect yourself to yourself, and then use that as your guide for awareness. And as you increase your frequency of awareness through, I assume, the love frequency, the love vibration, you could bypass whatever darkness and evil things that are out there that it may try to pull you down, and continue with that intention and awareness. I think it's brilliant that you start with breath and breathing, and how we all started life with breathing. But doctor, I want to thank you for coming in and explaining this multidimensional, faceted topic for this multidimensional conversation. It's brilliant. Once again, I appreciate everything you're doing and everything that you're sharing now with humanity. And now's the time for people to just breathe and become aware. Thank you again.